All right, everybody. Hope you had a good weekend and hopefully nobody tried to log in for class on Monday on President's Day. Um, so today we are very lucky. We're going to be going over chapter 5, which is talking about business messaging. And for that and with that, I kind of racked my head and said, okay, who's the best person to talk to who's done this, who knows about putting out a message? And my dear friend Crissy May came to mind, and I begged her to come into class, and she said yes. And Crissy has a long history in many different industries, from magazines to real estate to coaching to physical fitness to if I remember correctly, you were in the hospitality industry for a little bit too. Or am I wrong
Long,
with that?
long time ago.
Long time ago.
I've done it all.
She's done it all, but she has, in all those different endeavors, been able to take her idea and get it to the public so that her consumers, her competitors, and everybody knows what she's doing, how she's doing it, and why she's the best choice to do that. So, with that in mind, I said, please let's talk about this a little bit and share with you guys her history, her story, and what you guys can pick up from that. So, first, did I miss anything that you want to share about your background that I don't know or skipped over?
No, I think you got it all. I think the best lead into, all of this was my competitive skating days. When I was a figure skater for about 12 years, that's really what kind of prompted this zest for life and just kind of go-getter mindset.
Okay, and that is the one thing I did forget, because I always admired that too. So when you started, and I'm going to start with the real estate thing because that's what I've known you best and longest for. There's thousands and thousands of realtors in Arizona, in Phoenix, and Scottsdale.
Mhm.
You had to sit down and kind of say, how do I stand out? How do I make myself different? And how do I get that message out? So, what did you go through when you started thinking about all that stuff?
Um, it sounds so simplistic, but I just wanted to show up as myself. I mean, I wanted it to come across as, what made me so authentic rather than try to, um, be like everyone else. And a good example of this is, when I transferred, talk about rebranding, but when I was in the health and wellness industry for about 12 years, and I went directly into real estate, it was a really hard transfer because everyone knew me just as the health and fitness girl. And so I've always been known as Crissy. My legal name is Christine. And when I got into real estate, so many uh, people in the beginning had said, you have to use your name Christine. No one's going to take you seriously as Crissy. And so right away, I kind of just got a really icky feeling of that, you know, stigma, how real estate agents are. And I said, you know what, that's not who I am. But I ended up moving forward with that and started using Christine. And it just didn't feel right. So for the first 6 months to 8 months, I really felt like I was being positioned in that typical agent role, and it just did not mesh with me at all. It's not who I was. I'm not going to go to the office and wear, a full suit blazer. That's just not me. And so I learned very quickly, in order to become successful and stand out amongst the others, was to show up as my best self. And so, I modeled and modified all the top producers, and I just went with what, was privy to me, and I didn't try to force anything else.
Okay, and then going from Christine back to Crissy, um, you had to kind of say, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be true to me, which is so important. But that purpose, what took you further to say this is going to elevate me to the next step or keep me in the the realm of where I want to be in. I guess what I'm saying is like the purpose behind it. How do you look at that and define that short term and long term,
Um,
if that makes sense?
sure. So, I'm a firm believer in anybody can look the part, but you have to back it up. And so very early on, I realized there were a lot of agents, if we're, specifically talking real estate, that just did not show up. They had poor communication skills. They never answered their phone. It was like pulling teeth just to try to do a deal. And I thought, this is so easy to be great in this industry because 95% of the people are not showing up. And so by just honing from my competitive skating days, which taught a lot of discipline, follow through, and focus, I just went to work and I showed up as my best self. I literally just went over and beyond very early on to set the bar, if you will. And in turn, that created a lot of instant respect from my peers. And of course, word of mouth, people, it's a very small town. I know it doesn't seem like it, but in the industry, everyone pretty much knows each other if you're, pretty active.
Yeah. And not, it was far from that long ago, but I mean, even going back to just 2010, 2009, 2008, that area, it wasn't as easy to get your message out as it is today.
Right.
So how do you kind of consider, how do I share that message? And obviously let's kind of, knowing it was difficult then, there's no sense in focusing on how you did it then. But in today's world, what do you think about when you say, I've got to get a message out? How do I consider the different avenues and the different methods in which I can share my message?
Social media. I know it gets a bad rap and I have a love-hate relationship with it, but I've cultivated a lot of great relationships professionally and personally throughout the years through that platform, whether it's Instagram, Facebook back in the day, YouTube, it doesn't matter. But I used it as a really good tool rather than a way just to kind of zone out and look at people's feeds. So collaborating with like-minded individuals, that was huge for me. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, there's enough business to really go around. And if you start collaborating with people, whether it's local businesses, other members that are, high achievers, that's just going to fast track you to success. And that was really, it was very simple to me to figure that out very early on, rather than try to, push forward all by myself.
And that makes sense. And even in the same overall like messaging of things that you want to share, there are going to be different pieces and parts of going to different audiences. So when you look at like I want to send a general message to multiple audiences, do you adapt? Like, do you change the wording? Do you change, like, would you do multiple videos to say, I want to get this point out, but it's targeting different groups?
No, and I'll tell you why. I think it's really important to find a niche, and that's how you're going to really explode and be successful early on. I did try, to broaden that broad scope early on, as far as I'll focus on the East Valley, I'll do North Scottsdale, I'll do, Central Phoenix, downtown. You spread yourself way too thin. And to answer your question, you're going to have a very hard time really building a clientele very quickly, because you can't appeal to everybody. It's impossible. So when you start zoning in on what you can relate to, whether that is your vibe, the Central Phoenix corridor, or are you positioning yourself more as that luxury high-end agent in North Scottsdale, Paradise Valley? Finding that niche is so important. And I learned that quickly. And so I started focusing, as where I lived, which is a natural focus for a lot of people. But I lived in the Arcadia area at the time. And so I knew all the business owners. I knew, you know, or my gym where I trained at. So I already had that pulse right then and there. Why not focus on that? Because they already know me, they already like me, and they already trust me. So that's an automatic, easy boost for my business. And so that's what I ended up doing, was just niching down.
And if we take that thought out of real estate and just into general business,
Mhm.
that's important too, because you have to know your customer
Absolutely.
in any business. And if you overexpand that message to just anybody and everybody, the noise kind of takes over instead of it.
Exactly. And that's like you said, any business you go into, know your client. I call it avatar. I have my perfect avatar for my coaching clients. And now I can coach a wide spectrum of people, business and professional and personal. But right now, my message is completely healing and transformation, overcoming obstacles, helping people clear blockages. So, like, that's my avatar. That's my person that I'm seeking. And by doing so, I've already as you know, when I launched my coaching business a couple months ago, I mean, it just, I've already have 20 clients almost. So it's kind of crazy.
That's
Moving
great.
around.
And you said use social media. And what's so neat about that, which I don't think a lot of people who don't advertise don't realize, the power of the way they've set that up. I mean, you can really say, I want this message to go to these 5 people on these 2 sides of different streets, and it's going to get to them. I mean, it's amazing how detailed they allow you to be in that, which is important, and you need to think those things through. So
Mhm, mhm.
knowing your client is huge before you compose your message, because you got to write the message to that person.
Right.
So what, and I guess this would probably be better with the coaching business and the thoughts. Knowing your primary customer, how do you how do you find them? How do you put together, determine what's going to attract them to you? How do you decide this is a message I'm going to send that's going to get me 20 clients in 2 months?
Well, first and foremost, get crystal clear on your message. And, well, I would say that's second. Number one is what we just discussed, identifying your perfect client, your avatar.
Yeah,
Then get crystal clear on that message and figuring out what problem you can solve for them. Because if you can solve people's problems in any business, you will be wildly successful. People will pay you whatever it takes, because if you can solve that problem, you're in. And so instead of focusing on being a success, being all over social media, which is not hard to do if you have a lot of ad spend, looking the part, there's a lot of people out there that look like they're very successful, but there really is not a lot of value they're providing or any solutions they're figuring out for their clients. So I just, I try to figure out what's keeping people up at night. What's the major thing people are, it's keeping them up at night. And so I focus on that and I write my message according to that. Another thing I do, I spend a lot of time in my Instagram stories. And with that being said, I've been able to connect with a lot of people through whatever message I'm putting in there. And so I can kind of figure out with my devoted followers, the ones that show up a lot, what that looks like for them. And a lot of it was pain, it was overcoming fear, it was healing from divorce or broken relationships, past traumas from childhood. So I kind of knew these are already the people that see me every single day and resonate with my message. So now I can craft my message according to what's resonating with them. Does that make sense? So they're giving me the answers of,
yeah.
of what I need to talk about.
Did it change at all from what you thought it was going to be during like this kind of process?
Um,
Adapted a little bit?
no, not really. I deliberately stopped posting on my Instagram wall for about a year and a half because I wanted to be super, super, intimate with the people that followed my stories. So for instance, just to give an example, say it was only 500 people a day that I would see follow through and comment. it really helped me fine tune what is the biggest message, that my audience is seeking right now.
Right.
And so I was really surprised by a lot of the high achievers that were experiencing some tremendous pain. And you would never know it by looking at their social media.
Right.
So, it's quite surprising in that aspect.
And that's, I mean, I think for people who are marketing businesses and looking to develop that product or that service, the thing about the stories and the alternate versions on Twitter and Facebook for those things is it allows people to be a little bit more open, because the posts aren't posts, they're responses to you personally, and it's not publicly made.
I get more people responding to my stories than I do off of a post on a hard feed, because you're right. People get very concerned on, who saw me like or write this. And, I get it. I understand.
So for the coaching thing, I mean, that's huge, because I think it allows people to open up a little bit without the fear of someone else seeing the quote unquote weakness.
Right, exactly. And then to further that, I'm already signed on to a local media company for the next 6 months. And we will be batch filming once a month content that's going to be relevant to putting out a message that's going to in turn, one, serve people, but two, hopefully come back with, one-on-one coaching clients.
Yeah.
And so that's really vital. Whatever marketing tool you use, I would highly recommend video. It has the strongest engagement with people, and keeping it short and sweet is the most important part of it.
And so that's always my problem. I talk too much and too long.
I've been there.
But and I think the other thing that you kind of said, and I don't want to skip over, is you're not selling your service as a coach. You're selling solutions, which is it may seem totally like the same thing, but it's completely different. And how do you realize you have to give people something instead of just say, here, sign up and I'll, you know what I'm asking? I mean, it's like, you see so many people, I'm a great coach, I've coached this many hundreds of people, here are my fees. And they're selling their service as a coach instead of saying, here, I can offer these answers to your questions and your problems.
Right. And I think that's the biggest mishap that, people unfortunately fall into, that little trap of the sales part of it. If you're bringing a lot of value add to your audience every single, whatever, it's a couple times a week, whether it's just weekly, but if you're bringing strong value add, that sells itself. You don't need to talk about your services and everything else. They're going to naturally come to you and ask you questions. And so, like, to give an example, people started asking me 3-4 years ago, do you do one-on-one coaching? No, I'm not at this time. I knew I eventually would enter in that space again. It's just I had too much going on with other commitments. And so, but my point is, I never ever talked about coaching. It was always just constantly, and you've seen my stories, I'm constantly doing something that's inspirational, motivational to my audience. And so naturally they're going to start asking questions. So there's a way to do it without becoming that.
And even when it's not just your service, to tie you back to your days in the magazine world. I mean, you had to sell your magazine and sell the idea of people advertising, participating, being interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't based on, hey, we've got the best price for the best, amount of people that see your ads. I mean, it's building a relationship to be successful in that form of business too. So how do you get your message out back to those days, as far as and look at what AZ Foothills is going through the last year. I mean,
I did a lot of FaceTime. I just pounded the pavement. I constantly made my list every week on who I wanted to get in front of. Because just as you said, it had nothing to do with the magazine. And if, most people understood magazines, magazines aren't really going to sell your product or service. They just aren't. People look through them, but that's not necessarily going to sell it. So with that being said, you really have to cultivate those relationships, and it only happens through sincere face-to-face time. And making deposits with them, every day. What can I do for you? And it's coming from a place of, authenticity and really trying to help somebody in their business. But in turn, that's how I was able to build ad revenue so quickly, only because I was out there every single day in front of people, constantly.
Right. And I'm sure some of the people you worked with said, no, here's, a list of phone numbers you can call and talk to them. Here's our email, format that you just fill in the blanks and email out, and we get 10% return, which we're very happy with. So you always have to kind of think what's not only the best format in sharing a message, but what's the best for you as a person to share that message. And I think that's important also. And social media is like the big obvious choice now, but do you do a lot like through virtual meetings too, or do you keep it mostly social media?
No, I'm still weirded out by virtual meetings. I think I'm one of the only people that doesn't really do Zoom and doesn't do audio, voicemail, text messaging. Like and I'm still a very techie person, but I resonate with face-to-face conversations. I think it's really important because I've met a lot of people through Zoom meetings that are so different in person. It's really weird. There's almost like this that's happening when we're connecting through purely online. And when you're with somebody face-to-face, there's a different rapport. And so I find it to be very effective. And actually it helps my business because so many people have gone strictly to that way of communication. And so I go back to old school methods. I write handwritten notes to my clients, how about going to the mailbox and getting a great letter or a beautiful little card that says, hey, just thinking of you today. Who's doing that anymore? So I try to reverse it and stand out differently than others, because that's the miss, in my opinion. And you find it when you do talk to people face to face, that most people, and it depends what generation you're talking to, but most people prefer that method.
Yeah, no. And that's important too. Because everyone you deal with you may have a comfort level on how you get your message out, but you have to think about how the person you want to reach, how they like receiving the message.
Absolutely.
And adapting that. And sometimes that's tough because you can't force your clients into your pigeonholed way.
No, not at all. I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually, with every client I work with, one of the first questions I ask them, besides, the initial intake, is how do you like to receive communication? Because what you just said, it's really important to get that straight out the gate. I have a woman in Seattle that we're closing on a few of her homes this month. She loves a phone call. She'll do text, but she loves a phone call, and there's others that are like, don't bother me, just text me purely. That's it. So you have to, set that
expectation, or and it's hard because I hear a lot of business people who are like, I don't like doing this, and they've got to conform to me. And you're not going to gain more customers if you're that stubborn.
No, you have to look at it as the mindset of, how can I be of service to you?
Right.
You really have to come from that space. And when you come from that space, whatever industry you decide to focus on, it's going to be a game changer for your business. Yeah,
as much as that whole customer is always right isn't necessarily something you ever want to live on, but
right.
Especially when it comes to their communications, it's just that method, it's such a game changer, because if you call people who hate phone calls and leave voice messages, my voice message, until my wife told me to change it, was said, don't leave a voice message, because I don't listen to it. And I know there's a lot of people out there that do that. because I now it goes to text messaging, voice message, but it's like, why not accommodate your potential customer, your client,
Mhm.
your thing? And that's, I think, really important in communications. Are there any big like no-nos or definite don'ts when you sit there and think about what you see, like other bit, because I know you haven't screwed up, but like other businesses where you're like, I can't believe they've chose to share this or share that, and the method they're sharing. Anything like jump out to you like, God, that was totally off base?
A few, back in the day, many years ago, um, before I started cleaning my people who I follow.
Yeah.
Um, I'm very fine tuned on who I follow now, but there were a few people in real estate specifically I was shocked by. I mean, that I could not believe for the life of me how they actually got business off of the way that they portrayed themselves online. It was absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, it just blew my mind. But you know what? I mean, there's somebody for everybody, and clearly they weren't offended by certain behaviors. But yeah, there's some things that still shock me. Especially the rudeness of people. I really find that shocking that there's people that will still work with somebody that just really doesn't have any sort of care in the world for or respect for their clients. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it surprises me the inability of a lot of people in sharing their message to look away from other people's messages that they don't like or they don't think is right. I mean, when did we become a society so needing to dispute everything? I mean, and this may be a bigger picture than messaging, but it seems like, okay, too much time spent knocking down people's messages
Mhm.
instead of
Mhm.
just either ignoring it or building up, supporting it. Any thoughts on like why that is, or
Well, sure. People want to tear down other people and their messages because it's easier for them. They don't have to look at themselves. It's there's an insecurity and lack of connection on their part internally, so they go outside of themselves to whether it is make fun of somebody, belittle somebody, knock them down. Like that's just I've I've gotten over that part in any business, and I've learned to stay in my own lane. So, I think the best advice I could ever give anybody is stay in your own lane and you will always succeed. If you start allowing outside triggers in your inner space, you're gone. You're doomed. You really have to cultivate a space for your own safety, if you will, and setting healthy boundaries and knowing that with a crystal clear picture, this is where you're going to go and you're not going to be put off from an outside hater. It's just, you have to get and you build that through your daily routine, building confidence, and assuring yourself. So,
no, that makes sense. And in that messaging and in the planning of message, I know you said you're working with a video company where you're going to do like mass things. How do you sit there and say, this is a message I want to send for the next 3 months? I mean, like the order, the times, the things.
mm,
What's involved in setting that up where you're going to say, okay, this is my next 90 days worth of messaging, and I'm going to do it in 2-minute segments in different videos that I'm going to post randomly over the next 90 days.
great
What's
question.
involved in that?
Well, if you're going off of no data from previous posts that you've ever made or messages that whether it's through social media or it's an ad campaign that you've sent out in the past for your business, if you have no real feedback on that, you have to really craft it from a point of, what am I looking to get out of this? What am I looking to receive, from this message? And so that's one way. But for me personally, for these next 3 months of videos, I've gone back into my Instagram stories where I've had the biggest response to. was that one post I met, everyone went crazy over and just started writing and, oh my gosh, that made so much sense. I'd love to hear more. So I already have that data from the past year and a half to go back to reference. And so I'll take those top, let's say top 50 posts, and I'm going to actually take those messages and now on a video format, craft it to my audience. And so they can hear a deeper message with it and hopefully become a little bit more inspired with it, or, start doing some self-reflection on their own life.
Okay. And do you ever concern yourself that, I'm doing this all in February and that's going to cover February, March, April, May, that you're not staying current with maybe referencing what's going on in the world when you do things like that? Is there a downfall to over planning your message and setting it up too far out?
I think it depends on your industry.
Yeah.
So for instance, for a coaching standpoint, no, it's timeless.
Yeah.
Because the messaging that I specifically talk about, it can be applicable to any time in their life. So that's for me. Now, when it comes to, real estate or other industries that are maybe time sensitive, like magazines, forget it. It'd be very difficult to craft that far out because magazines are pretty time sensitive. Yeah. So I think it just depends on what industry you're in.
Yeah. And if, like, for some reason you launch these videos and the feedback isn't what you expect, mm-hmm. How soon do you decide, okay, there may need to be a different avenue of change? I mean, is it a continual, I'm analyzing the feedback I'm getting and it's not where I want it to be, how can I modify things? Or do I say, I'm running through the whole packet and then I'll go from there?
Monthly. So I'm set up on a monthly basis right now. We film for 3 hours on whatever location I choose, and they'll create either 10 micro videos from that, plus a full length video, or I can do 20 micro videos. And micro videos anywhere from 15 to 45 seconds. Gotcha. And so from that, I can now gauge per month, right? So we'll have those completed videos per month. Say I launched it in March, which is where I'm going to be doing, and it's just not really sticking to where I want it. I'll go back to the drawing board and reframe that message and, utilize the marketing team that I'm working with right now.
But do you see other businesses, and I kind of trust your experience in watching a whole lot of, from any industry and all industries, businesses that choose this is where they're going to go, and you can tell it's not working, and it's just, they keep repeating it anyways because either A, they paid for it and that's what they think they're supposed to do, or B, they think eventually it's going to catch on, or C, they don't review it and they don't know how bad it's failing. I mean, how do you suggest to businesses to look at a message and say, your message is working, you need to do more of it, you have to do less of it, you have to change it? What suggestions do you have in that?
I think it's pretty straightforward. When you deliver your message to your audience and you're not getting a lot of, engagement back on it, it kind of says it all. I mean, I remember just even going outside of the coaching, but back to real estate, the big thing was, ad spend. So take tons of ads out in magazines. And like you just said, you're signed up you're committed for a year. And it's not cheap. You're talking, anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 plus a month for these ads. And you're seeing pretty quickly, oh my gosh, I haven't had one phone call off this. Yeah. And, additionally, you keep going on 4th, 5th, 6th month, and the publisher or the ad person saying, oh, it just takes time, and you're just letting them go. And next thing you know, you burned through $15,000 of ad spend for the year. So I actually had that happen the first year in real estate. I fell into that trap. And so what I decided to utilize was I took the ads, rather than just letting them sit there, I asked for like 50 copies, and I would start going personally to deliver them to local hair salons, nail salons, whatever I could do that I had business relationships with. I would start doing posts through social media with them. So I just didn't have an ad sit there. I tried to just nurture that ad as much as I possibly could through different platforms and outlets.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you probably found, I mean, through that your customer wasn't the person that looks through the magazine and says, "Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
that's the realtor I want." And that's a, I think, a tough thing for a lot of businesses to admit or recognize, that the channel they chose might not be the right channel.
Oh, right. And I found out early on that ads just were not going to do it. As you just said, people are not, very rarely is someone going to open a magazine and go, I'm going to call that person to sell my house. They go based on referrals or relationships. And so what I started doing, I'm spending 15,000, or was spending 15 grand a year on ad spend. How can I make that really work for me and on a higher level? So I started finding the best food trucks in the city. And I thought, if I could put that money towards a food truck and put it in each neighborhood or in front of a business and be there and meet people, then a way better bang for my buck than having an ads in a magazine. And so
Sure.
I started doing food trucks on all my open houses, on just giving back to communities, going to apartment complexes. And to put in perspective, a food truck, like mustache pretzels, I think they're called.
Right.
People can actually take a little picture in front of them, which people get more engaged. That was like $400 for 5 hours. Way much better for my money than, an ad. So I just started playing with what was my feedback, what was I getting in return, and yeah, that went a long way.
And with certain things, I mean, you can do multiple ads or multiple notifications or publications, messages with obviously definite intended goals. I mean, I look at all the billboards lawyers put up,
Mhm.
and I've had conversations with quite a few of the different ones. It's like, what's your goal in that? And their goal is name recognition 100%, as they never expect business from it, except for the fact when their friend says, hey, do you know the lawyer, that their name, because of all the billboards, is going to come into mine and say, oh yeah, I know so and so.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, okay. Why? He's like, I'm not sure why, but call them. I know that the name rings a bell. So it's interesting to find out what the goals of your message are, and you have to realize what those are before you put your message out.
Well, right. And the billboards, like you just said, they're just there, people are seeing it day after day, and it's going to eventually stick in their head. But I suggest someone who doesn't have a lot of money, who's just starting a business, who really wants to get inserted in their community ASAP, is to offer to write content. You don't have to be a fabulous writer or a seasoned writer to write for magazines or different outlets. And so, that's a really good way to position yourself as the expert in your field and your community. It's a really good way to do it, and it's free because people love free content.
Yeah,
Publishers are always looking for it. So
that's a good advice. All right, we're just about 40 minutes in, so let me ask, anybody have any questions for Crissy as far as what she's gone over at this point? You guys have been overwhelmingly quiet, but I am happy to bug her for another 20 minutes, but I just want to make sure if anyone's got any questions, we'll take a little break here. All right. Well, the silence means either I'm doing a great job asking questions, or
or they've just zoned out.
they just zoned out and they're watching the news right now. I'm not sure what's happening in the world, but maybe.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thanks, Olivia.
Well, what I would the next thing I want to get into is like the idea of storytelling. You never want to tell like the whole story. You do these micro videos and regular videos. What you're always, I guess how to ask this, how do you set it up where you're giving enough information but leaving a little more where they're always wanting to either get the next video or reach out to you to get answers? How do you kind of format that so that you're sharing enough but not oversharing?
By keeping it simple and sweet, really, because that's what I think that's why I think these videos do so well. Because there's people don't have the attention span anymore nowadays. You're scrolling down social media. Everyone has so much content, that's being thrown at them. Yeah. So you have to grab their attention, but also keep it so short and sweet where it leaves them asking questions. And so I always love leading with a question because they grab someone's attention. Your brain's naturally going to start thinking subconscious just initially. But not dragging it on and on. And that's, that's why we're keeping everything at a max of 45 seconds. So it does leave them hanging. I know through Instagram stories, when I do post quotes or something of food for thought for the day, it's just, I've had more people than not ask me, I would love for you to elaborate on that. And so I just know they want to hear more. And that's where the notion or the idea came to do these little micro vids instead of me just posting a quote or whatever. Now I can actually connect with someone on a different level and then having them in turn reach out for more information.
And in that reaching out, obviously with the videos and the stories, you get the chance they can just hit reply and type in something. Mm-hmm. But is it also important to say, hey, if you want to do some research on me or look at what my coaching is, here's that link. Because I always say you want them asking questions, but you also need to make it super easy for them to find the answers. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people do that well as well.
No, you have to have a call to action. And so to answer that, after the video, at the very end, I will be saying something like, for more information, either click the link in my bio or go to CrissyMay.com. And then we're working on the website right now, but they're going to be able to have the opportunity to download a free, they're called lead magnets, basically. And so I'm providing free step-by-step processes to help somebody through overcoming obstacles, fear-based thinking, building confidence, transformative methods. And so they can go there, download it. So now I just gave them something of value for free. And typically that value add is going to be based off of all these other micro vids that I'm releasing. So they go hand in hand with each other.
And people wonder, okay, why do you give stuff away? You're in business to make money. And the neat thing about with messaging and return messaging and all that stuff, and I'm sure will be set up in the same manner, that there's going to be some sort of brief questionnaire that someone has to fill out, name, email, certain demographic issues, in order for them to get this free thing. So it is free, but then you get to put that into your database and utilize that information for your future opportunities.
Absolutely. There's for those of you who may resonate with her or not, if you ever heard of her name is Sunny Lenarduzzi, and she is a marketing genius through social media, specifically YouTube. But if you Google her, Sunny Lenarduzzi, she provides so much value add and free information it's mind-boggling. But one thing she has always stated, and she's built a multi 7-figure business in the last 4 years. is your database, is your email list. YouTube can pull the plug anytime. Instagram could go away tomorrow. Facebook could be gone tomorrow too. So your real business is in your database, is in your email list. And so by giving away pieces of, information value add, they're going to in turn give you their email list for that value. And so now you have a direct contact that you can touch anytime you need to with more information that's relevant.
And in your messaging, I mean, it's like one of those, I don't want to say evil secrets, but you don't say, hey, I'm giving you this to get this.
Oh, no.
But I mean, it's kind of just like this untold thing that says, okay, if you're interested enough in what I'm offering, this is the price it costs. That you're gonna get some emails from me, and hopefully those emails are gonna influence you to the next call of action, because messages are really a step-by-step force of those future call to actions. And I mean, to tie to your ice skating days, I mean, it's like you've got to learn this step before you can do the next step, before you can do the jump, before you can do the double jump and the triple jump and all that. And that's your messaging. You've got to walk them from A to Z and hold their hand there.
And many times it's timing. Somebody may not have the financial means to hire you at that moment or buy your product. But keeping yourself front and center, chances are down the road they will. I mean, even for me as a consumer, I have tons of people that I follow that I love, and it may have not been the right time for me to meet them, but down the road I have thought of them. Oh my gosh, because I see their stuff constantly coming through. And by the way, keeping the content very relevant and high value is super important. Yeah. You don't want to ping somebody with just crap information. You really want to make it high value and relevant.
And what about like the multimedia places? I mean, so many of these people you see, if they post something, because I follow people on multiple platforms, and they post something on one and the exact same post and picture is on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn even now. And it's like, that can't be good.
It can in some avenues, but even not. For instance, I'm not on Facebook really anymore, but I need to revamp my business page.
Right.
I've had so many people reach out saying, I'm so sorry, how have you been? I'm not even on Instagram. Yeah. And so I get what you're saying. I've found that to be kind of annoying in the past myself, but at the same time, you'd be surprised how many people have their platform that their go-to platform. You have your Facebookers, you have your Instagrammers, I rarely go to LinkedIn to look at a feed. And I maybe 3 times a month, although it has tremendous value. I just chose to focus on Instagram, and then now the next is YouTube. So you'd be surprised. I understand that, but a lot of people aren't on every platform.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just always kind of think it's the easy way out of it.
Yeah, it can be, but think about how much content you really got to be pumping out to change it up.
Or kind of like you said way early in the class today, you find that niche, you find that customer. It's like I don't think a message resonates the same way. Mm-hmm. If it works on LinkedIn, it's not working on Twitter or Instagram. And if it's working on Instagram, it's probably not working on LinkedIn.
Correct.
So I guess that's why I look at the cross stuff and say, it seems like just a lazy slap of, I'm going to throw all the pasta on the wall and see what sticks.
I will say that that's a good point to make. I think that people should at least modify to certain platforms. You can keep the same message, right, but at least modify it accordingly, because you're right. The same message I would put on Instagram, I would not put on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I don't see it working, or I mean being worth the time, except like just it goes back to, I'm going to put flyers on 10,000 cars at, a
It's
Cardinals game, and hopefully it works,
yeah, right.
So, and to go from ages ago to today, and probably kind of wrap up with this, how has messaging changed for you from a non-tech world, pre-Facebook, pre-Instagram, all that, to today? I mean, which one do you think, this is obviously easier? Is it better? Is today's world better?
No, I like to do a hybrid of both of them.
Yeah.
I'm grateful I launched businesses prior to the whole social media boom. I really am, because it's a great way to learn both methods on how to connect with people. I feel bad for those that just only know social media, because there's a missing link in that human connection that that people don't quite understand. But I kind of hybrid both of them. I really love the fact that we can reach just about any one of our avatars, if you will,
Yeah.
all over the world by a handheld device. I mean, that's mind-boggling, and it's pretty cool. But with that being said, I think there is some sort of lost in translation situation going on as well, when people just solely rely on that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure like your coaching has gone from what was typically a metropolitan Phoenix demographic, because there was no idea of doing it, coaching fully via YouTube or an online meeting, or Facebook chat or anything like that. Whereas now it's just as easy for you to be a coach with someone in Boston or Tokyo as it is to be a coach of someone in Arcadia.
oh yeah. I mean, so I think it's a wonderful thing if it's utilized accordingly.
Yeah.
If you're really on there working it like you should, I mean, it's just now, then again, that does not go without saying, algorithms, right?
Yeah.
So you're constantly fighting algorithms a lot of the times too, because they're changing throughout Instagram and YouTube specifically. And I know, because I have a marketing girl I work with, where they were getting crazy engagement for 6 months ago, and now it's gone down in half, where only X, Y, and Z are really seeing their posts. So you're fighting that as well, and trying to navigate that whole spectrum of it. But
And what was neat, and I haven't really done a lot of advertising recently, so I think it still plays to today's, but you can really be a small business and compete when it comes to social media and your message getting out there. Because before, I mean, I'll reference law firms. I mean, Goldberg and Osborne, Lerner and Rowe, who are on TV and every bus and billboard and whatnot, they had a huge advantage over the single lawyer law firms. But when you throw it into social media, those one lawyer law firms could compete. They could be as relevant with the algorithms and seen as much, if not more, than the huge multi-million-dollar law firms. And that's I think the last part of the messaging is knowing how to or where to benefit from the money you're spending. I mean, how do you kind of, because I'm guessing not only are you doing your coaching business and your real estate business, but probably a bunch of people come to you and say, Crissy, how do you do so well? Give me some advice. So, without sharing every secret you have, how do you figure out how to maximize all those algorithms I mean, is it just having someone who studies that full time that you pay, or how do you make your money spent worthwhile?
So now I've been able to get to the point in my career where I can find the best of the best to assist with that. So, I mean, I'm hiring on a girl who knows the real estate space inside and out, knows the coaching, launching coaching programs, especially digital products inside and out. And she has a proven track record. She works with some of the biggest players in the country And she's managed over $18 million in ad spend, and she's 25 years old. I mean, she's just a rock star. So I trust her. I know her and I like her. I've known her for 6 years.
Yeah.
So she's somebody that specializes in that. Of course, I'm going to pay her to figure that out for me so I can focus on what I do best. And that's working with my clients and having that relationship. You know, I'm building relationships. I can't keep managing everything else. Although I did for a long, long time. I wore every hat.
And that's with messaging. It's kind of important because there's so many parts of planning this message, getting that message out, that I don't want to say the smart people, but the ones that have the ability realize where you, like, you're using a video company to help produce the videos. You're using this young lady to help you. Where do the videos go and how do they get to the people they want to get to?
Mm-hmm.
The more you use resources available to you, the more effective your message is going to be, because there's not a person that can put out all the parts of the message all the time. It is a team effort where they become the most successful messages, no matter what it is.
Absolutely. And if you're just starting out and you're trying to be budget conscious, which I completely relate to, you know, a good example is the magazine. When I was when I was the editor in chief of the magazine, I had to figure out quickly how I was going to get tons of content that was, you know, from experts in the industry. And so, you know, you just have to start utilizing students is a great way, you know, going to like certain business schools, you know, or even, you know, people that are newly fresh with videography. They'll work a lot of times just for experience and credit. And so that's a great way to start from scratch and build. So you don't necessarily have to have the ad spend out the gate.
No, or the paid people, but it's just,
right.
Even if it's not paid people, it's the idea of perfecting your message.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to utilize friends, family, even to say, hey, if you read this, what is the message you're getting out of this?
Mm-hmm.
To find out if you're saying what you intend to say, or if the reader, the video watcher, any of those people are hearing what you think you're saying, because sometimes those are very different.
Oh, absolutely.
So, all right. Well, I will give you guys one last question or chance to throw something at Crissy. Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you so much. And someday soon, we're going to get face to face again and have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or something.
The music festival.
The music. Well, I don't want to wait till October, but if we have to, we will.
Yeah, right.
Any questions for Crissy? Everyone's staying on mute. All right. Well, I will let you go. Thank you so much for stopping in and sharing. So I will talk to you soon.
Make it a wonderful day.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.